I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I never wanted to be a doctor, let alone a neurosurgeon. But here I am, and I'm loving the journey. So what changed and how did I get here? If you've ever felt a little lost or unsatisfied in life, this video might help you a little. I'm going to tell you the story of my journey to become a neurosurgeon and the mindset you need to find yourself. We're going to talk about Ikigai, a Japanese philosophy regarding self-fulfillment and how I found mine. And we'll also touch on something called the flow state. These two things are absolutely vital if you want to find something that makes you content and feel fulfilled. Now, when I was a kid growing up, I never wanted to be a doctor. There weren't any doctors on either side of my family, and funnily enough, my first dream was to be a fighter pilot. I was obsessed with high speed and risk, and no one can deny that fighter pilots are cool. I didn't want to be anything else. Of course, like any kid, I also had my waste man instincts too. You could barely get me away from a Game Boy, Sega Mega Drive, and all the rest of it. When I realized I needed glasses, my dreams of becoming the next fighter ace were quickly crushed. I ended up coasting through school without ever really thinking about what I wanted to do instead. From early childhood, my parents insisted on me becoming a doctor. It's a common first-generation immigrant dream for their son to achieve a stable career with good societal status. Being a doctor apparently achieves just that. I, on the other hand, wanted to play more video games than ever before and became a proper fatty. I also really enjoyed reading and collecting comic books. I'd save up my pocket money and I'd take a trip to Dave's Comics in Brighton every Saturday and buy the latest Spawn or Blade of the Immortal issue. I found the art mesmerizing, so I started drawing and found a real enjoyment for it. This was the first time, other than playing video games or reading books, that I encountered a state of flow. When I started drawing, minutes would easily turn to hours and a day could quickly turn to night. I loved it. I'd lose myself completely and have something that I thought was beautiful to show for it. I was okay academically, but at 13, I was granted an art scholarship to my college. This was the first achievement that I really cared about. Something in my brain was telling me that I should pursue this into my adult life. Of course, that's not how the adults in my life saw it. I kept hearing them saying, "That's not a career," or "Will it pay the bills though?" Or "How can you support a family as an artist with no solid or regular job?" In my young mind, I didn't care. I had found my Ikigai and I was never giving it up. If I had to explain it in one sentence, it would be something that gets you out of bed every day and gives you a sense of purpose. This is supposed to be a really important key to living a long and happy life. And there are great documentaries about the centenarians of Okinawa. Okinawa has one of the largest populations of people over 100 in the world. When they were asked what the secret sauce was to their long life, they all had a sense of purpose, or Ikigai, something that gets them out of bed each and every day, whether that's tending to vegetables or seeing their grandchildren. It keeps them going. This is my first point in this story. Ikigai is important, but it's a fluid concept. Grandchildren wouldn't have kept them going in their 20s, obviously, but it's their reason to keep going when they're 90 or even 100 years old. By the time I was 16, I already knew I couldn't be a fighter pilot because of my eyes. I found my next Ikigai in the form of art, and people were telling me that I couldn't do that. So what next? Give up? Stop caring? No. You keep moving forward until you find the next thing that gets you out of bed every day. When it came to choosing my A-levels, my parents and others were pushing me towards medicine. My art and English teachers were pushing me towards art or English. Eventually, the decision was taken out of my hands. I ended up taking chemistry and biology to get into medical school, but I was allowed to do Latin and English literature at AS level. It was a mixed bag, but the Latin and English helped keep me sane. In fact, I was crap at chemistry and nearly failed my A-levels because of it. But biology was cool and I really enjoyed studying the brain, but that was about it. Anyway, I got into medical school and I was a bit lost, to be honest. I started coasting once again, not really caring too much about what I wanted to do, because I didn't really want to be there. I know that sounds awful, but I think it's important to be honest about these things. I knew it was a privilege to be there, but it didn't fire a spark in me, and it certainly didn't get me out of bed in the mornings. The turning point came in second year during Neurosciences when I started learning neuroanatomy. I enjoyed trying to explain bits to other students who found it tough and thought it was pretty cool. I was able to use my drawings to conceptualize pathways and try to simplify really complex concepts. After that, I started my clinical years, and I got to go to theatre with orthopaedic surgeons and general surgeons. The operating theatre felt safe. It was like a bubble or a cocoon against the outside world. You could see that when surgeons stepped in there with their teams, nothing else mattered. No distractions, nothing. Nothing came between them and getting the patient on the operating table sorted. Some surgeons talked to us as students, and others were really stern and hardly spoke. Looking back, the quiet ones were probably in a flow state, much like an artist or a musician or a gamer. I knew at that point that I wanted to become a surgeon. It was an imperfect craft that required skills and finesse. You take a patient's tissues and craft them into something that would help them. Now the question was, what kind of surgery? Later on, I organised a taster week in the neurosurgery department because it was something that we really weren't exposed to as medical students. I met Henry Marsh, and I'll just say that he's exactly the way you'd expect him to be from his books and documentaries. I met his registrar at the time, who took myself and a friend to theatre and got us involved. We saw aneurysm clippings, brain abscesses being drained, and all kinds of spine surgery. We were absolutely hooked. We threw ourselves into projects, hunting publications, audits, presentations. The neurosurgery department was different. The people were quite insane, but in an incredible way. They lived and breathed what they did, and you could feel it in the air. I'd found my new Ikigai. In my final year of medical school, we were given the opportunity to travel for a medical elective anywhere in the world. I could have lazed around in the Caribbean and chilled in the sun, but instead I spent nearly 2 months in Japan observing neurosurgery at Koshigaya Hospital, just outside of Tokyo. I was taken in by Professor Akio Hyodo and his team. The hours were brutal, 6 a.m. starts and sometimes 9 to 10 p.m. finishes. But it was beautiful. They involved me in everything, took me out for dinner practically every day after work. It started to feel like a family away from home. I started learning Japanese, and I spent my weekends getting lost in Tokyo, going to drum and bass raves and trying to take photos. I'd get lost at 3 a.m. with my new DSLR and just take so many photos and try out stuff that I saw in photography magazines. I was starting to find another Ikigai at the same time. I spent a couple of the best months of my life there, and I returned to London changed. I graduated medical school, went to work in Cambridge, and whilst I was working my first job, I was engaged to marry my wife Sahar, who was working 100 miles away in Kent. It was difficult and there were ups and downs, but through it all, I knew I had to pursue this. Deep down, I think I probably knew that if I couldn't at least try neurosurgery for real, then I might be lost forever in a profession that I never wanted to be in the first place. I was so lucky to have found this new passion, and I needed to grab it with both hands. My CV was good for my stage. It should have been good enough to get an interview for neurosurgery, but I didn't. It was a slap in the face, the first time I had truly failed at anything. I wanted to give up. I was newly married, without a job after foundation year 2. I hadn't planned on failing, and now I felt like I was. Times have changed now, and taking a year or 2 out to do something cool and different is practically encouraged after foundation training. But just 8 years ago, that was not the case. Having gaps in your training timeline would lead to uncomfortable questions at interviews. I had to find something to do that would fill the time in my CV, but also be beneficial. I asked around frantically, and people said, "You should become an anatomy demonstrator at King's." I had taught anatomy at George's as a peer anatomy demonstrator and taught medical students as a house officer, so I had teaching experience. So in 2013, I interviewed for the job of anatomy demonstrator with Professor Harold Ellis, a bit of walking history in himself, and I got the job. It was a bloody tough 8 months, but it was worth it. I met Duranko Pereira, who was one of my anatomy students at the time, and we're actually charity trustees together now at BrainBook. It just goes to show what a small world medicine actually is. After 8 months of grind and getting more on my CV, I applied to neurosurgery again and failed again. This time I was despondent and I thought, maybe I'm just not good enough. My self-esteem was at an all-time low and I was becoming desperate. My wife picked me up off the floor yet again and pushed me to keep trying. I'd applied for core surgery as well, and that was due to start in late October, so I needed a job until then. I applied to be a neurosurgery junior clinical fellow in early 2014 and was accepted as an SHO or senior house officer at King's College London. I was ecstatic that I had an opportunity to learn the trade and train in a busy and highly regarded unit. King's also had a really great reputation for training up their juniors to get a national training number. It was hard work, and by the end of it, I felt like I'd been forged in fire. This took me all the way up to the start of my core surgery in October 2014. I worked hard at developing my general surgical skills and used the time to prepare for and pass my MRCS, which is a membership of the Royal College of Surgeons. This was at the same time as reapplying for neurosurgery training. It all paid off and I passed the National Neurosurgery Training Interview. It was a grueling day of clinical interview stations and practical skills tests that left me feeling absolutely wiped out. I had gone into that interview with the mentality that I had nothing to lose and that I was good enough for the job. It gave me laser-sharp focus on the day, and I honestly believe that without that mindset, I wouldn't have got the job. I finally got the email saying that I had a training number on a Sunday. I was doing an extra operating list with my then boss, Mr. Bello at Epsom Hospital. We were just about to start a keyhole gallbladder removal. I remember it like it was yesterday. I called my wife and told her that not only did I have a training number, but I had got it in London. We wouldn't have to move anywhere. We could stay in the home that we had just bought, and we'd be around our family. We both cried, and it felt like so much tension had been lifted off of our shoulders. That was one of the best days of my life so far. I started neurosurgery training in August 2015. Fast forward 8 years and I've had 2 more of the best days of my life so far with my 2 young daughters coming into this world. I'm now going into my 6th year of neurosurgery training. I can't tell you how much of a privilege it is to be here. When I'm in the operating room, I don't just feel happy, but I'm satisfied. When I say that my job gets me up out of bed every morning, I mean it. Don't get me wrong, it's not always easy. I definitely have my bad days, but the good outweighs the bad. I wish I had more time to read and draw, and I wish most of all that I had more time to spend with my incredible wife and daughters. But I suppose I've reached that part of my adulthood where it's all about finding balance, finding an agreement between the things that bring you your Ikigai and your flow, keeping them going despite any and all of your responsibilities. It's tough, but you know what? I'm absolutely fine with that. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my new channel, and do drop a comment down below to let me know if there's anything you'd like me to talk about. This is a new channel, so I really appreciate your support. See you next time.